Hello and welcome to the Book of Leaves podcast. My name is Cara Carney and I am the host. Welcome back to Book of Leaves. This is a podcast where I interview people in Ireland who are doing things that are great for the planet in any way, shape or form, and the whole idea is we take a leaf from their book to add our own way of living after we get to know them and their story a little bit. And my name is Cara. I am the host of this show. I work in the arts industry and this is just a huge passion project of mine, and I've been an environmental activist since 2019. So that is stuff for new listeners who this is their first episode listening. Welcome. It is so lovely to have you here, and to any of my regular listeners, hello and welcome back. Thank you so much for tuning in again to episode 68. This is a chat that I'm going to have with Diane OConnor, who is a comedian and an activist and has a sustainable life school business that she runs with a woman called Natalie, and we'll talk all about what that offers. And yeah, I can't wait for you to hear. And of course, I am just back from the Elements of Change festival at Clough-Jordan Eco Village over the weekend. It was amazing. I mean, you've probably seen me if you follow on my Instagram going on about it. It was just so good to have a community-led festival. I know there's a lot of people who couldn't make it, but hopefully next year you will be able to. Yeah, I already can't wait for the next one. And the panel talk that I had was really, really enjoyable. It was about activism, and I had Aaron Bailey and Mel White and Rachel Lockery, who is also known as Eco Hun online and runs loads of amazing events. And I asked my mum to join me on the panel as well, who came to the festival because she is an amazing singer-songwriter and has been an activist for years. So yeah, there you go. That was a little summary of the weekend, but of course you're not here for that. You're here for the chats with Diane. So I'll hand it over to her. Don't forget, if you like what you hear on this podcast or any of the episodes or any other podcast, don't forget to leave them a review, especially if you're listening on Apple Podcasts. And Spotify now have a way that you can give them 5 stars if you go onto the main page of the podcast. And this also has a Patreon account. I do have a Patreon at patreon.com/Book of Leaves if you are in a financial position that you can contribute that way to the show. It would be greatly appreciated to go towards the running costs of the podcast, but also towards my time. That would be greatly appreciated. And I have a once-off contribution method as well on buymeacoffee.com/Book of Leaves, where you can contribute multiples of €3 towards getting me a coffee or a hot chocolate or a cup of green tea. So here is Diane. Don't forget to give her a follow and check out the website, and I will catch you at the end. Enjoy.
My name is Diane OConnor and I am a comedian. I'm a climate activist and I'm also an entrepreneur, which feels very weird for me to say because it kind of happened by accident during the pandemic. I think a lot of people got accidental occupations or feathers to their bows. Is that the word? Feathers to their hat, maybe, during the pandemic. Yeah, so I love stand-up comedy. That's kind of my passion. And at the moment, I am writing a show about climate activism. So that's a lot of fun for me. Well, you know, as in, because the climate's not always fun. So it's fun for me to try bring some fun to it. And I also, the social enterprise I am part of is called the Sustainable Life School. And I'm part of that with my colleague and very good friend, Natalie Pavone. And yeah, I've just always been involved in the arts, and I've always been a bit of an environmentalist. And then I kind of fell off it in my 20s. Like then in my 30s, I was like, oh crap. And then I kind of jumped back on activism bandwagon. Not bandwagon.
And you said you were always a bit of an environmentalist. So were you kind of always aware of it growing up as a child? Was that because of where you grew up, or was it your parents or anything?
It was my dad actually. He was always into it. So this would have been the 90s. He would have been collecting all our tins and our cardboard and stuff. But I always remember him rinsing everything out. And then he would bring it to curbside, even though it's called curbside, but it wasn't at the curb. He drove it to the recycling centre. So this is before we had the recycling bins. And he always had a little compost piled in the back of the garden and all his little different bits and pieces, and you'd get in trouble if you put the wrong bit of food in the wrong bowl. And then he grew veg and stuff as well. And he was always like mad about the lights at nighttime. Like I have the soundtrack in my head, like you'd be up in bed and you could just hear my dad, lights off, washing, he'd be going through the whole
Yeah.
power. Now, obviously that's an economic thing as well, for people in the 90s. But yeah, no, he was always very tuned in.
That's amazing, because that for back then, when it can be, it wasn't convenient. You had to kind of go out of your way to be
Yeah.
kind to the environment like that. That is someone who was ahead of their time. That's absolutely brilliant to have that kind of inspiration. And then I guess before we get into the adult activism or the activism you're doing now as an adult, how did you get into comedy? Like you've always kind of been interested in the arts, and now you're a comedian. Like how did that happen?
Yeah, well, like I was the youngest of four, so I had like three older sisters. So I was always very good at kind of realizing I needed to kind of put myself out there for a bit of attention. So like I was always like dancing in front of the telly and that sort of thing, thinking they were loving it. And then I remember I think I was around 9, and I asked my mom, could I go to drama classes? And like I think my generation, we were very aware of finances growing up, and you were thinking, oh my God, this is such a big ask. And she was, she was great. She just sent me straight in. And then I went on to youth theatre, and then I wanted to be an actor. And then I ended up trying to be a drama facilitator, and I loved that. While I was doing that, I was in a comedy improv group with people, with some of my friends from youth theatre, from Tally Youth Theatre.
Yeah.
So we were adults at this stage. We were in our early 20s. And we used to do a show that was like half stand-up comedy, half improv. So from that, I got to see stand-up comedy, and I got really interested in that, like that form of comedy as well. And I was like, oh, I'd love to try that. They look like they're just telling funny stories. I could do that. So I tried, and like a lot of stand-up comedians, I was terrible for the first few years. And then you realize, oh wait, no, it's not just telling stories. There's punchlines and structures, a lot which I'm still learning about. But yeah, so that's kind of how it happened. I was always a performer, always an entertainer, and then that's kind of how I ended up in comedy and stand-up comedy.
Wow, because it's one of those things that I actually ended up doing, because I work in the arts as well, and I did it was a comedy workshop, but I ended up there was only one other person who wanted to do stand-up, and we had to work in pairs, so I was paired with her, and then I ended up having to do stand-up when I wanted to do scenes, but I was like, okay, look, I'm in a safe space. And even though, so I wrote like a little story, and we just had to perform it in front of like these 8 people in like a work. It was a really safe,
Yeah.
like nice environment. I was shitting a brick. I couldn't be a human. I was shaking so much. Like it's complete. I've been on stage in front of literally hundreds of people at a time with lines to learn and things to do. I've sang in front of people, no problem at all. But there's something about the pressure of having to make people laugh, and if they don't laugh, oh man, I bow down to you, Diane. I don't know how you do it. It's like one of the most amazing things.
I don't know. I think it's like anything. I think like I would, even though I did youth theatre growing up, like the thought of trying to learn lines now would like totally petrify me. But I also think it's about like, for me, stand up, I think it's a lot about like switching off, like as in kind of just focusing actually on believing in your jokes. Yeah.
Pretty good. But then as an adult, you started getting more active. Did that happen because you started having a family, or what was it that triggered it for you?
There was a lot of things. I remember I kind of started to get back on the radar kind of around 2015, I think. And I noticed sharing Facebook posts isn't actually going to change anything significantly. Then also I had my first baby in 2016, and it was around the same time. She was only 3 months old when Trump got elected, and I hate to mention him, and I hate to give him any credit for absolutely anything. But it was at that point I realized, oh, because I had always kind of naively believed the government were going to sort it out when it got serious enough. Do you know that way? Like,
A
I
lot
really
of people are
believed
the
that.
same. Yeah.
And then that I realized, because like a lot of people, especially environmentalists, you're reading into his views on the environment and him dismantling environmental protections and all this. So you're kind of reading this in total like distraughtness. And it was at that point I realized, oh wait, no, so we can't trust the government. And I was like, looking at my baby and I was thinking, oh my God, I have to just do everything I can. Like, it was just that, well, I have to, like, this is my responsibility. It was I have to, but it was the choice not to give up hope as well. Do you know what I
Yeah.
mean? So there was that, like, I'm totally responsible. I have to do it. It's my individual responsibility. And also I refuse to give up hope that we can't do something about this.
Yeah. And how then did that start? How does your activism manifest? I know we'll talk about the Sustainable Life School, and obviously as a comedian you talk about it in a really enjoyable way, because people are like, how do you make climate change funny? Diane knows how. That's
Well,
how I first met you, doing like a workshop, and I think you were asking us like what are the things that we're just not willing to give up, and we were telling like funny stories about our like 20-minute scalding hot showers and whatever, and
yeah, yeah,
it was really, really enjoyable. But was that how you got into it, or did you start kind of making choices at home, or were you joining protests, or what were you doing?
It definitely started with protests. I remember like going to the Women's March and then going to climate marches and I can't remember the name of the organisation, but it was like protests outside Leinster House for like protecting our trees, our native forests. But then, like protests are not all the time. So you kind of feel like, well, I need to do stuff in between this
Yeah.
to, like, I need somewhere to put this energy. I'm coming home, I'm feeling very riled up, and now, okay, what do I do with this energy? And I guess then from the point of view, like yourself, like we were talking about that person in your family member who's like, oh my God, is she going to start lecturing me about the contents of my fridge again? You kind of realize, actually, I'm getting nowhere with this. Like this is bringing me nowhere. And like that changing, sharing Facebook posts, but I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe this. You're like, I'm not actually changing anyone's mind about anything. And then obviously because I love comedy, it made sense to combine the two things, because like with all serious issues, I think comedy has a real natural ability to disrupt the tension. And then I think when you can kind of alleviate tension, I think you kind of help people a little bit more open to digest different things,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
No, it makes perfect sense. Like you're
And I guess
getting
it's
through to
fun.
people with their defense valves down, like you're not, if I'm doing a panel talk, people might be like, oh no, look, she's going to be talking at us. But if you're at a stand up comedy show and it's not like hitting you over the head with a stick, your people are more relaxed and more open to kind of thinking of things a different way.
Yes, actually, and I always forget this because the first moment how it started was when I joined the Climate Ambassador program in 2018, and it was part of which you make pledges and you take upon action. So for me, okay, I was like, well, I'll do a climate themed comedy night, and Bright Club Ireland, who's a science based comedy club. I collaborated with them on it because they already had experience of like that, delivering the heavier topics through comedy. So we collaborated on a climate theme night. And then from that, then myself and another comedian, Anne Gale, that's how then the climate comedy workshops came about. So it kind of actually all
Ah,
started with the Climate Ambassador program. I remember them saying, do something like, think about what you're interested in. And I was like, well, I'm interested in comedy. So let's try marry the two. And then it just kind of kept snowballing from then. It just kept making more and more sense to keep seeing what else I can do.
yeah. So then, how did the Sustainable Life School start? Was that during COVID, you were saying?
So me and Natalie we met at a baby group when my 2016 baby was only 3 months old. So
I love how
she
that's
was
you
mad
refer
into,
to her. My 2016 baby.
I know,
I'll never forget her
sorry.
birthday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know, sorry, that's my comedy. I'm overspilling into this podcast. She was like, Natalie was mad into sustainable fashion and I was big into zero waste. So like, I was going to zero waste festivals and I'd recently moved to Drumcondra, so we had small changes. And so
Cool.
I was really into reducing plastic and reducing packaging from my lifestyle. So we kind of both saw the other person's side of sustainability and we were thinking, okay, that's interesting. And noticed that we both had holes in our sustainable lifestyle, which is totally fine, of course, to have holes, but just that we realized, okay, you're off doing that. I don't really know anything about the sustainable fashion, and then vice versa for her. So we used to talk about sustainability a lot on these play dates. So this was going on for 4 years. We were just chatting about it, and it was just before, I say it was January or February 2020, and we were having like one of our play dates, probably our last one before lockdown, and we were talking about like, well, we feel like we should do something together. What could we do? And then Natalie was kind of saying, I just noticed that everything is fragmented. Like there's sustainable fashion over here, there's zero waste over there, and like just talking about what about a hub where you can learn about them all. So then we started to play with that idea, and then the country shut down, so I wasn't gigging, and Natalie was working from home, so everybody suddenly had a bit more free time. We then decided to apply to Social Enterprise Ideas Academy about this idea for the Sustainable Life School of a place where people can come and learn about all the different areas of sustainability. So like fashion, energy in the home, food, and then like reducing plastic. So kind of, yeah, it was kind of a slow burner, and then we just kind of had an epiphany. Oh, maybe this is the thing.
Yeah. So what is it that you guys offer? What does the Sustainable Life School do?
We have a couple of little threads, and one of our main thread is our 4-part program, where we offer both virtually and in real life a Sustainable Life School program, so people get to learn about the 4 areas, which are quite the high impact areas where you can really make change. So we deliver sessions on them, and at the end of each session we give people what we call power changes, so like maybe a suggestion of 3 changes of things that they could do within their own life to help make their lives more sustainable. So we work with both communities and businesses on that, and like that we're still we're still building and developing. And then we also have our Instagram page, the Sustainable Life School. We try again offer sustainable lifestyle tips on that, and we have our website. So we still have like so many more big ideas of where we want to go, but that's kind of where we are at the moment.
Amazing. That's so cool. And it's for like businesses as well as individuals can like get in touch. And then I guess for some people listening, like what are some of your favorite tips for people in those areas?
Well, one thing at the moment, now this is mainly, I guess, for fashion, but I think this applies to everything, that you can get nearly almost anything you want secondhand. I've everything from wellies, a blender, push bikey thing for my daughter. Like, and even one time I really wanted dungarees. I went on adverts. I just put in dungarees. Lo and behold, I found a girl in not so far from me that wanted to sell her dungarees. So think secondhand first. Look for secondhand first. I think that's the number one thing you can do. Apart from obviously not buying things you don't need, I think trying to get things that are already in circulation is the best thing you can do, really.
Yeah. It can be cheaper as well to do that. Like
Oh
you're
yeah,
getting really good
yeah.
things for like less than half the price loads of the time.
Definitely, and I think this is the real stickler with with a sustainable lifestyle. Like there is a lot of kind of ideas that it's more expensive to live sustainable. See, there's so many variations of that word sustainable. It's tricky, um, but that it can be more expensive, and of course it can. If you're buying first hand clothes from a sustainable company, of course it's going to be more expensive, and that's for good reason. But if that's not within your budget, and often that's not within my budget, I look to get pre-loved, which is the most sustainable choice anyway. And then I guess, of course, with buying loose products, yes, it can be more expensive to buy some items like nuts. Nuts loose are really, really expensive. So for me, I just don't buy nuts. But that's my choice. But then like dried organic pulses loose are really, really cheap. So I think it's about looking at what you can do. Like also I think it's just stopping buying some things that you don't need. Or then sometimes just being okay with yourself for buying things that you do need, even if they're not sustainable, because that's just it's feasible for you. I feel like I
Yeah, we have
went
to be a
off on a
bit
tangent
easier.
there.
No, no, not at all. It's all relevant, Diane. It's all relevant. It has to be what matters, and to you, everyone is different on like what they need and the resources they have and the time and the money and that. But that's something that I just think is missed so much about being kinder to the planet. Can also save you so much time and money, which people don't talk about. They think, it's more effort, but it's actually can save you so much.
Oh my God, it does. Like, I feel like the amount of times, like, I can go into town and a fancy, like, sale sign does nothing to me. A pub, however,
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, duh, 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 duh. So that, like you said, you do get time back.
Definitely. And then did you have some more tips then for energy or food that you were going to share?
Okay, so food is a tricky one. There's so much to say. I feel like I could do a TED talk on this, but I think the top thing you can do is tackle food waste. We have a massive food waste problem in this country and globally, and the research tells us it's one of the top things we can do as global citizens to reduce emissions. So tackle your food waste. Buy less food, especially when it comes to fresh produce. And buying loose, I think, is a great way to do this also, apart from reducing the packaging. But also, I think a lot of us have bought that multi-pack of peppers or whatever because we wanted one or two, and then there's a whole load of victims of moldy vegetables at the back of the fridge. After tackling food waste, buying organic where you can, buying loose where you can, and buying seasonal where you can. When you buy organic, you're helping promote biodiversity, and it's actually better for your health. By buying loose, again, we're cutting down on packaging, and buying seasonal and local, we are also cutting down on air miles, and so that's brilliant too. And also seasonal, it's what's supposed to be at that time of year, so it's just nature is telling us what we should be eating. So we should listen. I think nature is quite wise.
And then is there anything as a parent, did you try go down the cloth nappy route?
So yeah, so I did the whole clot. I'm doing the whole clot nappy thing, and I have to say I love it. Like, it's. I know that sounds like a ridiculous thing to say, like, but nappies aren't fun. Clot nappies kind of are, because they have like cute little names like Fluffy Bum and like Sweet Pea.
And the
So
designs on
it
them,
do,
yeah.
and the designs, yeah. And like you can get them pre-loved as well. And I remember when I first found this out, I was like, oh my God, that is totally gross. And I was talking to my sister about it. And my sister's a nurse. And she was like, Diane, what do you think happens with hospital sheets? And I was like, oh, right, yeah,
Oh my God.
that's an
I never
excellent point.
thought of that.
Yes. And this is the thing. Like, I think for any hygiene thing that might freak you out about sustainability, there's actually something that we all accept within our lives that shows us that actually no, it's perfectly safe once things are properly cleaned, of course, that it's actually totally fine. Like, what is the difference? People are going to restaurants and using the cutlery, like, so there's no difference there at
Yeah.
all. It's the
Yeah,
same
yeah.
thing. You're trusting that the restaurant are cleaning things properly, like,
Yeah.
and that's it. Like, you
And then
don't
you
bring your own
get the
cutlery.
cloth nappies then, and you obviously like wash them first or whatever. Again, do you know what I mean? Like if you get something from a charity shop as well. Because I interviewed Annie from Cloth Nappy Library, Ireland on this, and she was so helpful in explaining like exactly how they work and what you do and the different parts and everything. It's like Transformers, like assembling like a cloth
Yes.
nappy and all, but it just seems like so helpful because when you think the amount of nappies kids go through, it's mind-boggling. And again, in the long run, especially if you can get them secondhand and you're getting them on a loan basis from the library, it will save you a fortune yet again. Like so, is there anything else about parenting wise that you found helps? Because I know a couple of parents, people with kids, listen to this that children are sources of of waste a lot of the time, and how can you how do you deal with that?
Yeah, no, definitely. It's an excellent question. My first love into sustainability was the zero waste. And I think the 5 Rs can really just stand to you throughout your sustainable lifestyle. So the first one being obviously refuse. So that is really the top of the list when it comes to parenting, because when you have a child, the amount of things people will tell you need, like a nappy bin. I don't need a nappy bin. I just need a bin. Or if I'm using cloth nappies, I might not even need a bin. I think if you can just step outside parenting for a second and think of it from a marketing point of view, and think of all the products we're told we need, just remember there is some company that invented that product to tell us that we need it, but there's a good chance we don't,
Yeah.
And so I think if it's your first child, to talk to other parents about, look, out of all this nonsense I'm told I need, what do I actually need? And when it comes to like buying clothes, there's so much available on Free Cycle, adverts, in charity shops. Now, I know this might work for everything, but if you can kind of start with that kind of headspace, you save yourself a lot of time and money. So yeah, the 5 hours to refuse stuff, again, just to reduce, just buy less of the stuff. Why have I forgot the next door? So refuse, reduce, reuse. Again, so looking at the likes of reuse, like so the
Repair.
reusable nappies. See, the 5 hours, they're ever changing. I think there's probably about 10 of
There's
them
so
now.
many of them. There's
Really,
like 9 of them. Like I know recycle is now the last one. Yeah.
yeah. Don't do it. Yeah, don't recycle. No, but do if you have to. But don't
Don't go
don't
to
wear
that
a
one
sticker
first.
saying recycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think yeah. So buy less. Don't buy stuff that you don't need, and then like try to resource stuff pre-loved is really, really helpful. And yeah, just trying to jump into the reusables as much as possible. So whether it's the reusable nappies, the reusable like lunch boxes and water bottles, because this is the strange thing. Like I was in a chemist there recently, and like literally there is disposable you can buy disposable bibs. Like my mind was blown.
Aw.
So I know. So if you can, that means people are. So I think it's really just thinking of just taking a step back and just trying to. That sounded really serious. But they are the things that have helped me most. And I think talk to your children. My poor child, she's never had balloons at her birthday party. And that's probably going to make some people listen to your podcast cry. They're probably going to be like, that poor child. But she's never looked for them because she knows why we don't have them. I've explained to her that, well, when firstly they're plastic, but if they get released and they can end up in rivers or in trees and hurt birdies and sea life. So she totally understands it. So I think once children are of an age where you can have these conversations with them, you can have them very gently without scaring them. And I think then they're actually they're supportive of the sustainable lifestyle. So if we go to buy a magazine as a treat sometimes, she just knows she's not allowed any of the ones with plastic. And there's no tantrum because we've always talked about it.
Yeah, they're not, they're intelligent, way more intelligent than they're often given credit for. Like they understand, they get things more than adults do a lot of the time. They're like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay. And they just take it.
Exactly. Yeah. Like that. I guess if I had come to sustainability when she was already 3 or 4 and she'd had all her birthday parties, that obviously that's going to be harder for people then trying to introduce it. But I don't think it would be impossible either, because like you said, they are intelligent and they do understand these things and they love nature at that age,
Yeah, definitely. They're very, very, very compassionate. So is there anything, Jan, that you want to share with listeners? Anything at all, be it stories or tips, before I let you go? Well, not before I let you go, before we go into some really random questions, and then I'll let you go. Is there anything you'd want to share?
The main thing about all this, it's so overwhelming. Like it really is. But when you are feeling totally overwhelmed by it, sometimes I think it's okay to either totally switch off, do 2 things, totally switch off, but also actually go purposefully and look for good climate news and good environmental news. Because it's like when the climate ambassador program, that's one of the things I really got from it was when you see all these amazing people out there doing these brilliant things, it kind of makes you realize you're actually part of this big giant network of people that are trying really, really hard to try help us in this climate emergency and try create a better world. And for me, that's one of the most helpfulest things to do, is because it is overwhelming and it is serious and we can't pretend it's not. And while corporations have to be held accountable, and we can push and push for that and keep pushing for that. I also do think that doesn't take away from individual responsibility as well, you know, because we all do live on this planet. And also actually does help. I think it does help you feel better that, like, if you're pushing towards like positive change, like I do think it, you know, I think it's win-win in so many different ways.
It is, yeah, and it's not always, you know, you're not always positive, and not always like it's a. Depending on the day you ask me, I don't know how I feel about the future and everything, but I just, no matter what, like I
Yes.
just have to keep going. I just have to keep doing what I'm doing, because that's something that I refuse to do, is to just give up and be complacent, or, you know, and like you said, you meet so many people, and once you join these communities, Climate Ambassador is amazing, or, you know, you join a group, or you go to something like Sustainable Life School and you meet other people. We are apathetic, and we tend to give up or feel despair because we think we're alone, and we think that, you know, because the government is really hard to trust, like you were saying earlier, that they have so much power than us. But like every big change, from marriage referendum to abolishing slavery to women's rights, they all started with like individuals that were all spread out thinking this is not right, and then like finding each other and, you know, coming together for a common purpose. Look at us rallying, doing a big rallying call at the end of the interview.
Yeah. Come join us.
I love it. But no, it's so true. So, but to switch it on its head now, I am going to flip things up a little bit and ask you to pick a letter of the alphabet, and I'm going to give you a random question. The answers don't need to be related to the letter of the alphabet. I just chose letters instead of numbers because I'm odd. And it was just, they're questions that I want to know from guests, but just haven't got the time. So this is how I go through it. If you want to pick your first letter.
S, please.
For Sycamore. Ooh, where in the world would you teleport to first? So you get your teleportation license. Where would you go?
I would teleport to Sydney to my cousin Alison, who I love very much, and she lives over
Oh,
there.
oh, that's so nice. That would save you a fortune. I love that. It's like literally on the other side of the planet. So yeah, if only it became a thing. If only the scientists were working on some
I know.
carbon-free
Carbon
teleportation.
free, maybe.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it would be. Pretty sure it would be. We'll figure it out. But would you
Yeah.
like to pick another letter?
L.
L for lime. Ooh, what's your favorite memory from a protest?
This is very, very exciting. This is very exciting. So I was actually thinking about this earlier when I was thinking about protests. My favorite memory is actually one of the recent protests I went to. So one of the first big one back, and I can't remember exactly when, but it was Fridays for Future. And I went with my two girls. So I was pushing Alex in the buggy, and Eliza was alongside me. She was joining in the chants. I didn't say anything to her. She was just listening. She was joining in the best she could. And
Oh,
eventually we got down to one of the bridges near the custom house. I can't remember what bridge it was. I'd already been out with the girls 2.5 hours at this point because, you know, we arrived early and everything. And I was like, if I don't go now, I'm never going to be able to get them home. And I just knew that. So I was like, okay, we have to go. And Liza was like, no, no, no. She was screaming, I don't want to go from the protest. I want to stay at the protest. But anyway, we did have to go. And eventually I got her home. And she came home and she found bits of cardboard. And like, she actually, interesting enough, one of them was a little insert from my Swedish stockings that I recently bought. And
oh,
she
very
got
good. Great
that.
sustainable company. Yes, nice placement. Very good.
Yeah. And she got that and another little cardboard and she stuck it on. She made a little placard.
Oh
Um,
no.
so I think that was my favorite thing about it. That's definitely my favorite memory. Yeah.
That's amazing. Like, that is so cute. Oh, I love that as well. No wonder. That is adorable. So she'll be the next Greta Thunberg, get little Eliza.
Yes.
I love it. Now, I'm aware we have to wrap up now. I know you're on school duty. So where can people find you? Do you know your Instagram handles and that off the top of your head that people
Yes.
can follow you on?
So
I'll link them in the show notes as
for
well.
comedy, okay, perfect. So for comedy, I'm Diane OComedy. And then on Instagram, I'm Diane O'Connor 9. Then for the Sustainable Life School, we're the Sustainable Life School on Twitter and the Sustainable Life School on Instagram.
Amazing.
And I'm also on Facebook as Diane OConnor, the comedian, but be totally honest, I'm less active there.
Yes, I mean, I think that's just the way Facebook is going now these days. Good for the groups and not much else now. But that's great. I will link them in the show notes as well so people can check you out. And Diane, thank you so much for the chat. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Ciara.
There you go, guys. There was a little part in that where the audio changed for her talking about food. That was because there were some technical issues, so she resent that link to me. But I hope you guys were able to get some food tips or parenting tips or any kind of sustainable living tips from Diane, or even just have a laugh. And do follow her on social media because she always has events coming up, from comedy gigs to sustainable related events. So definitely check out the Sustainable Life School and check out her Instagram and her socials if you are on them, to stay up to date and to just have a laugh. And when she's sharing her failures and her successes in this eco journey that we're all trying to take. And thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to share this podcast if you enjoyed it, recommend it to a friend, share it online, and of course it is on Patreon and buymeacoffee.com as well if you're able to contribute that way. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you again in 2 weeks' time. Bye.